Oh, hello there. I'm Andy with the S'more Stories podcast, and we have a great show for you today, but I just wanted to chime in here before the show officially starts and let you know that from time to time, we'll be talking about some gruesome and gross history, so viewer discretion is advised. If you want to play it by ear, look up the title of the episode on Google. If it immediately seems like some history you can't bear hearing, then don't listen. We aren't offended. We want to value your boundaries and comfort level. If you continue on, just know some of our content recalls some disturbing history. I mean, we talk about ghosts and death after all. As far as cursing, we try not to curse, but you will also try to hear that bleeped out as best we can. Feel free to reach out on our social media if you ever have any questions. But other than that, let's get on with the ghost.
Guys, welcome to S'more Stories. I am your host, Shay, and I am joined with my co-hosts, Andy and Mantis. This is a podcast where we will be talking about all things paranormal, including ghosts, aliens, skinwalkers, and way more cryptids to come. Cryptids, my bad. Today, we are exploring the world of Bobby Mackey's music world. Whoa.
Okay.
So this will be episode 1 of our first podcast, all things spooky and supernatural.
Because it's episode 1, I did want to just also inform the viewer that we did kind of record these unintentionally out of order. So this one is a little bit later, but it's also because we had a lot of drama with Bobby Mackey's, where we were actually going to go there and investigate, but if nobody is keeping up with the fun new fantastical things, Bobby Mackey's website originally was saying, oh, well, we're renovating, so you can't conduct a tour just yet. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting. And so one day we got the news that Bobby Mackey's was actually going to be closing down. So that's just an FYI to also preface this, that Bobby Mackey's will be closing and relocating. Apparently the building was just too old to salvage.
Yeah, it wasn't living up to, like, city standards.
We saw the building. It's a little rundown. But just to let you guys know, and then also for context, it also sounds like Bobby Mackey's still owns the lot and may be rebuilding by 2026.
Yes.
But just to let you guys know that we were going to go there, and we did go on the premises, but we didn't quite get the tour we wanted to have. But yeah, and then this is Shay's lead, so I'll stop taking this from her.
Well, thank you, Andy. So this story can be a little graphic, so listener discretion is advised. If you are not keen on hearing about demonic possessions or anything, or even decapitations, I would click off now.
So she just said the goods right away.
Well, I mean, I gotta preface it because...
say murder, homicide.
I mean, fair. Bobby Mackey's music world is located in Wilder, Kentucky.
Which is like a small area right outside of
Cincinnati. It's on like the border of Covington, Fort Thomas.
Okay.
So it is speculated that Bobby Mackey's was a slaughterhouse/meatpacking facility in the 1850s to the 1890s. The lowest part of the building was used as a dump, basically to dump all the animal waste and nastiness.
Nasty stuff.
Blood and guts.
So I think also around this time, just the mid-19th century, that seems to be when Wilder is actually just starting off as a town in general. And it's known that there is a slaughterhouse in Wilder at this time. It's just not confirmed if it's actually at the location of Bobby Mackey's. And I just want to make that clear. But then also, like, yeah, apparently the only other thing Wilder was known for at the time was that it was a halfway point for a railroad between Louisville and Cincinnati. Or not even really a halfway point. It was just almost there, but it was like a main stop. And then other than that, the town's not known for anything.
I mean, yeah, it's really, really small. If you ever look up pictures of it, it's very small farm area still today.
Yeah, it's very, it gives me very, like, I hate to say it like this because it sounds like a negative, but it gives me very, like, Texas Chainsaw beginning of the movies, where it's, like, gas station guy who's like, you kids aren't from around here, and, like, the Roadhouse aspect.
I
and
can
then,
see that.
I mean, there's a strip club up the street, so it's kind of given that weird vibe. It's very, like, you pass through it almost. You don't stay there.
The town of Wilder is kind of weird in general. There's, like, nothing out there besides a couple of things and, like you said, a strip club. I mean, I guess they need something to do without having to drive 30 minutes to get to Cincinnati.
It's only funny that a strip club is still around because I feel like we don't see those at all anymore.
They're very rare.
Unless you go down to Atlanta.
Really?
Oh yeah, always near the beaches. Sorry, I'm getting really sidetracked. But it's true, like you don't really see that because online's a big world, so you don't really need.
Well, especially with, like, the creation of OF and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really don't.
OF.
I'm not trying to get...
I think you need to add more to that disclaimer that you said earlier now.
Talking about some other things. I'm sorry. But yes, slaughterhouse. It was a slaughterhouse from 1850 to about 1890s.
Yeah, somewhere in the 1890s.
And from my understanding, another reason why it's speculative is the building was actually demolished, or at least partially. So, like, it's not for sure, once again, confirmed that that's the location. But that's not what Bobby Mackey's is now. It's not built off of that.
Right. It's not the original building. So in 1896, Pearl Bryan's headless corpse was found about 2 miles away from where Bobby Mackey stands. Pearl had been pregnant at the time with her boyfriend, Scott Jackson's baby, and he encouraged her to move to Cincinnati where he could get her an abortion. And she didn't want the abortion, so when she refused...
And my favorite thing I think about it was, first off, as you kind of said, she was found in an isolated field at the time, but you can track it now to the Fort Thomas YMCA, which I find hilarious. But yeah, that's where her body was found, and the only way she was even identified, because she had no head, was by her custom-made shoes.
Yeah.
Which is so of the time, but then also, like, you know this girl had money if she can get some custom-made shoes.
Right. So, Scott Jackson and his roommate, Alonzo Walling, had tried to perform the abortion themselves, but it failed, like, miserably. They killed her, and they tried to hide the tracks of them by hiding her body in this field.
Which, for historical purposes, and Mantis, you can also chime in if you have any details. But I actually did see some of the coroner's report. So sadly, what Pearl Bryant had was her head was gone. She had multiple stab wounds on her back and her hands. And she had cocaine found in her stomach, which was reportedly because earlier they went drinking and they slipped that in her drink, which if she's drinking while she's pregnant, I don't already know what's happening, but whatever.
But it was the 1800s. Did they really know that was...
Western medicine was not very prolific at this point.
Yeah, and Scott Jackson was a dental student at Ohio State. So, you know, going places. But they slipped her cocaine, all these things like that. The only thing I wanted to point out, just because I find it suspicious, is there is actually no reports on the coroner report about any mutilation or anything of the area that a baby would happen. So I don't know, did they actually attempt to abort the fetus? I don't know.
I think they use that as, like, a way to cover it up.
Like, do you think, they're just being buttholes and they wanted to actually just kill somebody?
Well, I mean, once you kill the mom, especially depending on how far along she is, that baby's gonna die regardless. So maybe their whole plan all along was to kill her.
That's why I just don't...
Just so it's 2 less problems in the world.
Yeah, I just don't fully buy the abortion thing. And not that it couldn't have been excluded from the coroner's report, but there is nothing saying it ever is.
Right. Like, they purposely decapitated her so they couldn't identify her. Like Andy said, she was only identified by the shoes she was wearing. But the head of Pearl Bryant was never found. And it is speculated that Scott Jackson was a part of a satanic cult at the time. And this was part of a ritual, either decapitating her and keeping the head, or the whole thing in general.
So, sorry, I just want to add, because I do think one of the most confirmed stories we have on Bobby Mackey's and things like that is Pearl Bryant. This is a confirmed murder. The only issue that I have, and we'll get there later, is she did not die at the location in any specific way. She died near it, but there's that just going for it. So people who say she haunts it, I think that's purely speculation. But also, because this is the only confirmed history, I just wanted to make sure we for sure got all the details. So you did an awesome job. We mentioned Scott and Alonzo and all that stuff. But I also did want to say that Scott and Alonzo were tried and convicted for Pearl Bryant's murder, and they were sent to be executed. They were actually the last 2 people hanged in Newport, Kentucky, ever. And the only reason why I specifically wanted to also mention it was because because Alonzo's last words as he was being hanged, because apparently the hanging also didn't go as planned. They're supposed to drop and it would break their necks, but they actually just suffocated to death because the fall didn't break their necks. So before he, had that happen to him, he claimed he would haunt this area for forever.
Yeah, he literally vowed that he would haunt it forever.
But yeah, and also with the satanic thing, I did see some stuff also saying that even kind of before we're talking about Scott Jackson in specific, there's some supposed, we really have no way of confirming, a satanic cult of unknown origins may or may not have been performing rituals and or sacrifices at the well in general, with animals and humans.
It kind of sounds like that was the biggest hot spot, so it could have been a slaughterhouse, quote unquote, as like a cover up for these.
Okay, I don't know if I buy all that,
but it's not impossible.
So, as you're going to get into, but from the 1890s to about 1920s, this building was not really a thing. So, that does leave a lot of speculation open. I don't think the slaughterhouse was satanic. I kind of even have a hard time thinking, like, oh, of course, some Satan worshippers were coming back during the day. But it was an empty field or an abandoned partial building. So, it was kind of like grounds for some hooligans.
Now, I think I heard some rumors kind of going back to the well. I think it was Shay who said this.
You had to say your own name.
Yes. But the well, there are speculations that maybe the head was thrown down there, but again, it's not known, and it's maybe a little bit too late to ever know.
Well, I would assume at this point, unless you find some very specific bones, they drained 2 whole canals. I think the Erie and Miami canals.
Yeah.
They drained them trying to find her head. Nothing. No idea where her head went. Could it have been eaten? Could it have been consumed? Disgustingly, I think, yes, it's a possibility. I doubt it. But why else? Why are we decapitating her?
And keeping the head.
Yeah, like...
I'm sorry, decapitation's like... That tells me there's something extra wrong with you. Like, it's not an accidental death if she was decapitated.
There's no way this was an accidental death.
This was not a failed abortion.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The only thing I just wanted to put in there is that there's a lot of people who speculate satanic worship has happened in this area, and some speculate that Scott Jackson apparently did it. But I want to also point out that it was not confirmed that he did it, and it's not confirmed that satanic worship ever happened here. So I just want to say that's kind of what the abandoned building may have been before we jump back to what it becomes. But
it even could have become one because of all the stories of it being one.
No, absolutely. You never know. I just want to point that out, that like none of it's confirmed, and we don't even really know for sure why Scott Jackson and Alonzo Walling decided to kill Pearl Bryant. They were never fully confessing. They weren't just like, yep, this is how it was done.
Well, and besides there being a baby to get rid of, there was no motive.
No, exactly. I think they might have sadly just been, not satanic, sadistic. They might have just been disgusting, horrible people, but we don't know. We really don't know. This has happened, over 100 years ago at this point, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then, sorry, you can continue on. What happens to the lot afterwards?
So, the slaughterhouse had been demolished in the early 20th century, and it sat as an empty lot until the 1920s. During the Prohibition era, the lot was turned into a casino, nightclub, and speakeasy.
So that was roughly, from my research, and please correct me if I'm wrong, 1920s to 1930.
Yes.
Speakeasy, see?
When Prohibition had ended in 1933, Buck Brady bought the building and named it Primrose. More than a decade later, the casino had caught the attention of Cincinnati mobsters who tried to muscle their way into the operation.
So yeah, the Primrose was mostly a casino. It was gambling, stuff like that. Apparently the Cincinnati area had its own mob, which I've not read too much into, but that's kind of hilarious. Like, because you think of Chicago and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know anytime during, Prohibition there was mobs. Because,
yeah,
you make easy money. But I'm sure you have this story, but I didn't know if you wanted to elaborate at all on the Albert Red Masterson story with E.A. Buck Brady.
I'll let you go into that a bit more, because I don't have too much on it. I have, a couple.
Oh, yeah, no, and I don't have too much on it either. It's just exactly what you said. At Primrose, E.A. Buck Brady's trying to run kind of what sounds like a decent business. I don't think he's trouble. I don't think he's a good guy, per se, but he's not trouble. He's not part of the mob. And he keeps getting harassed by the mob because they want his business and stuff like that. For one one reason or another. I guess it's making good money. I really don't know. But either way, the mob wants the business. EA is kind of like, I should call him Buck. But Buck is like, I don't want to sell this to you. And so the mob is trying to kind of forcefully take it in a very mob way. And at some point, Albert Red Masterson does approach Buck, and he's like, I want the casino, and you're going to give it to me. And apparently he draws a weapon on him and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And EA Buck Brady, he draws a weapon in response, is basically like...
Shoot him point blank.
Yeah, and so Red, aka the guy from the mob who was like, give me your business, and then he's like, haha, no. He was later convicted of attempted murder, and the mob kind of stopped bothering him for a while, but it sounds like he still submitted and sold the casino to the mob anyway by the 1950s.
I have it as 1940, late 1940.
Yeah, I have, actually, you're right. I have that it was, the casino ended its rounds in 1946.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So getting into the next decade, the 1950s.
Also, Buck killed himself. I saw that.
We shouldn't be laughing at someone like that.
Well, I'm not laughing at the event. We're just laughing at how I popped my head in.
Random, yeah. So anyway, in the 1950s, Bobby Mackey's became a nightclub called the Latin Quarter. One of the dancers named Johanna fell in... Johanna, my bad.
You've never heard the Bobby Mackey song? Johanna.
I don't listen to Bobby Mackey.
I don't either, but that's his famous one.
But Johanna fell in love with Robert Randall, a singer at the club. She became pregnant with what we assume was Robert Randall's baby, and her father did not approve of their relationship.
Also, her father was the owner of the Latin Quarter.
Yes.
Who it's unspecified what his name is, but this is all speculatory, and I have to also say that literally Johanna does not have a last name, and neither does the father, but yes.
But it could be trying to protect them, I guess.
Well, it could be, it's not that it's not true, it's just we have no confirmation, we don't actually have a surname or anything like that.
Right, but Johanna's father really did not like Robert and Johanna's relationship, that it is believed he had his criminal connections kill Robert Randall. When Johanna found out what happened to Robert, she poisoned her father and then killed herself. So it's believed that she poisoned her dad and herself. So, yes, she killed herself as she killed her dad, basically.
But yeah, and also what I wanted to point out, because I know you jumped in to write the story that's very dramatic, that's what the Latin Quarter is known for, and
yeah,
there's plenty of pictures. I actually saw in the Bobby Mackey's auction recently, they were selling some photos of the Latin Quarters.
Yep.
But back when it was the Latin Quarters, basically, from the old guy who used to own it when it was the Primrose, E.A. Buck Brady, when he gave up in 1946 and said, you know what, this club is just too much, I can't handle this casino, it's really not good for my soul, and he sold it. The Latin Quarter was owned by the mob. This is also where we're getting into some illegal stuff. This is where so many fatal shootings happened that they even had to close the club down just because it was like low-key a health hazard. And to this day, well, I guess maybe not for much longer, but there's still bullet holes in the Latin Quarter was crazy. I just have to put that out there, that this was rough and tough.
Well, yeah, what I have here is in 1978, it was forced to shut down because of fatal shootings.
Yeah, so just want to also point that out, that even with your story, the owner, aka Johanna's supposed father, was probably a mob boss, and he is literally running this mob thing. And the singer may have been tied to the mob, we don't know. Johanna, daughter of the mob, we're talking godfather.
Like, she's protected, they're not gonna let her get involved with a enemy mob or
whatever, yeah, but yeah, it's just, it literally could be like, you didn't marry my daughter, like, but yeah, so I just wanted to also point out that the Latin Quarter, even though its name is pretty fancy, it is not where you want to be.
Yeah.
And also, it wasn't a casino anymore at this point, it's a nightclub.
It was a nightclub, yeah. She was a dancer and Robert Randall was a singer.
So we're doing entertainment, guys.
Yeah, so they were employed by the Latin Quarter. Well, Johanna might not have been technically employed. I'm sure her dad was not paying her.
So, and then you get to 1978.
So yes, the Latin Quarter was forced to shut down in 1978, as I said, because of several fatal shootings in the area. Well, later in that same year, 1978, country singer Bobby Mackey bought the building. And what's ironic is his name is Robert Randall Mackey.
Yeah, so, and I heard something like before, he was gonna be named, like, Randall Robert Mackey or something like that. Like, his mother was gonna change her name, but then suddenly it just felt like it should have been the other way around. So it's almost like some weird mystical fate that, like, he was gonna be Robert Randall. Disgusting, by the way. I'm sorry, no offense.
That's not a cute name.
I guess Bobby works better. And then also, my favorite thing is, just because, like, sorry, this is me, but it becomes the nightclub in 1978 for Bobby Mackey's, but everybody calls it a nightclub, but it's kind of, like, not, like, what I picture when I picture a nightclub.
Well, it's not really.
It's called a honky-tonk. So,
Yeah,
like,
it's
okay.
a music hall / tavern. That's what a honky-tonk is.
I'm a honky-tonk, man. But yeah. I just wanted to point it out.
It's no longer a nightclub.
Yeah, it's like, it's a nightclub by definition, but it doesn't seem like...
It's not your typical
We're not
raving, no, yeah, none of that. It's a country nightclub.
I know, it's like, hey, do you want a Cosmo? And they're probably only there serving tap, beer, and stuff like that.
Yeehaw!
Maybe not even tap. They might only serve bottles.
They might have, like, some whiskey and stuff, you know.
You're
Country
right.
people like their whiskey.
Very cowboy.
Yeah,
A lot of Ford F-150s in the party.
I'm sure.
But yeah, you can dive into the history of Bobby Mackey's.
So I couldn't find too much on when Bobby Mackey himself has run it, other than what the business itself is.
We're getting into the modern day.
He started to do, like, specials, like, once a week of, like, oh, half off this, half off that, like most businesses do. But what's funny is, like, they were hearing a lot of complaints of customers of being touched by people that weren't there. And Bobby Mackey has said he is a skeptic. He doesn't believe in the paranormal, but he does think that something strange is happening in the building. Like, he does not believe it's ghosts.
So, yeah, and we're definitely going to talk more, I think, about all the speculations and stuff like that. But I think we should also kind of, like, set out the map, if you can, a little bit. So, like, there is a basement floor that it seems like, first off, you can only go in by going outside. There's no way.
You can't get in through it from the building.
Yeah. And then upstairs / the main floor is, like, that's where the nightclub part is. That's where the stage is, the bar.
Yeah.
All the good stuff. And then there is, like, an upper part that's actually, like, an apartment.
Yeah.
So, like, this is 3 levels. And I also wanted to point that out because there was somebody, at least a caretaker at some point, who lived in the apartment above, too. So he was also a prime person to experience all the paranormal activity that went on. Mantis, you were going to say something?
Sorry, I had lost my train of thought and zoned out there. But what I was gonna say, if he thinks it's just something weird, but he's not a believer, what does he think it really is? I mean, is it like a sorcerer or?
I think there's a healthy level of skepticism. I consider myself to a certain degree a skeptic because I don't really think ghosts are
Dead people.
Well, and I think it could be. I just don't I believe in the paranormal. I believe there are things that are not normal in this world and we cannot easily explain them yet. I believe in that, like, literally.
You're a skeptical believer.
It's just, and I think that's what most people should be because I have an issue with people who are completely skeptical, who think nothing paranormal can happen.
Or completely believe.
But then exactly, people who think they know exactly what this ghost spirit is. So I understand why he's skeptical, and also it's probably also for his own mental health. Like, this is literally considered the most haunted nightclub in America. You don't think he needs to try to keep his head on his shoulders?
Right. Well, and especially for how long he owned this, like...
He was 30 when he bought it.
He's old now!
He's 78 as of
78.
the time of recording.
Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier, Bobby Mackey's is relocating from Wilder to neighboring Florence, Kentucky. He's owned that bar / music hall, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, for 46 years so far. I just did the math. But yeah, that's a long time. And oh my God, he's old. But yeah, so he's a big skeptic, whereas his wife is not.
Well, she had that experience in the basement. Did you have?
Yes. So Bobby Mackey's wife, which I couldn't find her
I don't
name.
think she has a name publicly released,
Yeah.
which is probably fine.
Yeah, that's probably for the better. She claimed to have smelled roses in the basement, and then she was grabbed by the waist, picked up, and thrown down the stairs.
No, thank you.
Like, yeah.
Also the basement. And because doesn't the basement, so this is just from my understanding, and maybe I didn't read this correctly, but doesn't the basement also have that wall that people say they see faces in?
Yeah. the basement has that, and it has that big hole where that well was.
Yeah, well, yeah, I knew.
And that's where they're saying that portal is.
I knew that, but
Yeah.
I didn't know if the wall with the faces was also in the basement.
Yeah, so the basement is like the biggest hotspot of all of Bobby Mackey's. It has literally this hole in the floor where the well for the slaughterhouse was.
Mm-hmm.
That is still there. That is why they believe it was a slaughterhouse. And that is also believed to be a portal to hell.
When we went there, I think Mantis actually put his phone under a crack in the door and saw the basement a little bit.
Yeah, I did. I took a few flash photos. Nothing too serious that I could see, but it was definitely interesting to see a rundown building's basement.
Yeah, I will say being there in of itself was kind of creepy, mainly because no one else was around. And yeah, it was the middle of the day, but something still felt off, but not like dark.
So I didn't really get that same feeling per se by being outside of the building. But one, I'll say already, basements are creepy in general. I mean, I don't love basements, but it's just like, and also, exactly, like Mantis was able to put his phone under the door and take a photo. You don't think that possums could be under there? Or
Right.
rat, nasty
There's
stuff?
well, especially since they haven't been in there a few months now.
Yeah.
Like, they've been in Florence for almost 6 months now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so the basement is generally creepy, but then also, like, I mean, like, the nightclub, it's very dimly lit in general, so it's kind of like, I get the idea that even if the energy isn't creepy there, it's kind of got this creepy ambiance to it because of how dark it is.
right. And I didn't feel like it was creepy by any means when we were just outside. It was when Mantis and I had walked around to the other side of the building. That's when it felt a little off.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's because the sun doesn't shine right there. If it's, I don't know, something about this little corner in the back. Do you remember where I'm talking about?
Yes.
It's actually where we got a lot of detection on our EMF detector, but we don't know if that was because of like a pipe there or
There
what.
was pipes inside the building, and I was wondering if there could be potential like water heater or just something in there. Maybe it was even for like gasoline.
Right. It was the most spike we had though, besides near a dumpster, and the dumpster could be just because it was metallic.
Also, she was really close at some point, and I do have video of this, so make sure you guys check out our TikTok for both bloopers and fun things. We will be investigating some more areas too, more officially also. But one of my favorite things is I think I got on camera Shay just playing with the EMF meter around an electrical box, and you're like, it's spiking. I was like, there's an electrical box right above.
I didn't see it,
No,
so
I'm not saying you were stupid. I just thought it was funny.
I literally didn't see it, so I was just like, oh my god!
She's like, it's a demon. No, I'm kidding. She did not say that.
We're gonna get
I started
grabbed
crying.
and thrown into the highway.
That's it. That's the one. But yeah, and then, so we kind of covered most of the history, I'm pretty sure. So we went from slaughterhouse to kind of just open area for Satan worshippers, potentially, to nightclub, casino, speakeasy, to casino, to nightclub, to nightclub. So yes, that is the history of Bobby Mackey's. And also, obviously, a lot of rowdiness throughout the history. I mean, speakeasy, casino, mob, slaughterhouse, dead people,
Well,
potentially.
like a speakeasy alone, those were scary to operate just because you're doing this under, like,
No, you
very
get caught.
punishable then.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Which was insane, but...
But yeah, so we're going to move on to the part of the podcast where we just kind of talk about sightings and, like, what people are claiming, what are we seeing, things like that. So let's start off with, like, what are people, like, claiming is going on?
Well, I'll start off with the hot spots.
Okay.
That way we get an idea. So the hot spots include the spotlight room and catwalk over the stage, where the performers play music or dance like Johanna did. The well in the basement, like we talked about, which is believed to be the portal to hell. The old China room, which I don't really know where that is.
Me neither.
But that's what I found. And the platform area near the kitchen.
And I also want to mention I've seen some stuff on the bathroom, which is also really weird.
Really?
Yeah, so a full-bodied apparition is seen coming into the the men's bathroom specifically, and he has a curly mustache.
Well, apparently the men's bathroom is also
I know, right?
potentially a hot spot.
Now, I could be mistaken, but wasn't there like an incident where one of the spotlights fell from the catwalk, or
I don't remember seeing anything like that.
could have gone off pretty. I can't remember. I could be wrong.
You could be thinking another spot, but you could also be. But a lot of people have claimed to smell roses or rose perfume. A lot of physical touch. A lot of people have felt physical like either being pushed, just touched on the leg, or even being breathed on.
Scratched.
Yeah, there's
like
an insane amount. There's said to be footsteps on the stairs up to that apartment that we were talking about. A lot of people claim to see a headless ghost that they say is Pearl Bryan. Full body apparitions of who could be E.A. Buck Brady or Alonzo.
Which I find funny also that people keep claiming they see Alonzo M. Walling, who definitely seemingly was convicted of murdering Pearl Bryant, but we never really hear much about Scott Jackson, the actual boyfriend, but whatever. Or secret lover, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because he didn't have any true connections, because Alonzo did say he was going to haunt that place forever.
Or at the least, it would be funny. What if Alonzo was innocent? He was just thrown under the bus because Scott was like, I didn't do it alone.
He did it.
He helped me. And your roommate's just like, what? Scott! Sorry. But okay, so yeah, we're seeing, so also just in terms of sightings and stuff like that, it does seem like people see a lot of full-bodied apparitions.
Yeah, there's a lot of full body versus actually hearing things. Like, this is one of the few cases I've seen where people see more versus hearing.
There is also a lot of knocking.
Yes.
We hear a lot of knocking. I've heard a lot of footsteps, things like that.
Footsteps, and then I've
Very
heard, like,
auditory.
they'll break glasses and stuff from behind the bar. I have seen
So some
that.
poltergeist.
Yeah,
So just
definitely
to define
poltergeist.
things really quick for everybody who may or may not be familiar, poltergeist is like a ghost that can physically move things, or at least suspectively. Like, that's what a poltergeist is. And then also in terms of full-bodied apparition, I'm sure it's pretty apparent what that means, but full-bodied means you are seeing almost everything from the head to the feet.
Yeah, it could be transparent, could be
Yeah,
a shadowy figure.
The quality per se, but you're seeing everything.
Right, yeah.
And I've actually seen, so this is one of the few locations we're going to be covering this whole season, where I have actually seen video evidence of shadow people in there. And it's so creepy!
Yes. I refuse to watch videos of this place because some of it is really creepy.
Even if I was to go in there, or somebody specifically even more skeptical than me was to go in there, I don't even care who you are. And even if it doesn't make you believe in ghosts or whatever, that's fine. You think it's a trick of the eyes. It is the scariest moment at the idea of just seeing a black figure, like, starting to walk down some stairs. You're like, who dat? Like, that, I would panic a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I don't see how Bobby Mackey is still a skeptic. Like, there's too much that went on here that it would turn me into a full believer. So there have been a lot of YouTube channels that do ghost hunts here, a lot of TV shows that have done ghost hunts here.
It's because it was open to the public and we were gonna do it.
It was very famous in the early 2000s, especially.
And why do you say that exactly?
That's when a lot of the shows really started going here. Was he the proprietor or manager? His name is Carl. He was helping kind of get them.
I don't know for sure, but who Mantis is referring to is the person who lived there. So.
Yeah.
And also, I think at some point it is claimed that he is one of the potential couple of exorcisms that have happened in the building.
Ooh.
So if you believe in exorcisms, that we're also kind of getting wrapped up into some of that.
Yeah, so an exorcism can be on a person or a place, which in Bobby Mackey's, a lot of people have claimed to either have been followed home by a spirit or possessed, which, no thank you. So an exorcism is usually done by a priest or another religious figures, because other religions have their own types of exorcisms. They're not exactly the same. But yeah, you get blessed with holy water and they try to expel this demon. There's actually a really famous video of an exorcism from Bobby Mackey's happening. And I think it might have been.
I think it is Carl's.
Yeah.
You can find that, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's easy to find on YouTube, because I just found it. But yeah, I don't know if I would go into a place where something would follow me.
But yeah, so a lot of physical stuff is happening here, and one of my favorites was also what I saw, mostly because I don't hear this too often, but it was the fact that there is a jukebox around, and apparently the jukebox is unplugged. It's been unplugged for quite a while, and it also does not have this song in its selection, but it plays the Anniversary Waltz.
Hey guys, just wanted to chime in here real quick and give us a brief breather, I guess. We are currently looking up the Anniversary Waltz, so we'll be right back.
Alright, so we actually just listened to the Anniversary Waltz by Vera Lynn, and it came out in 1941, which would roughly place it at the Primrose, which is where Buck owned it, where the mob was potentially trying to wiggle their way in. So yeah, that's about the time that the anniversary waltz was popular. So for this jukebox to be playing it, if we're gonna make some connection that it's being played as like a ripple in time, like it's from a distant time, it would probably be the 40s. Long story short. But yeah, so the jukebox is an interesting one that I also saw that, I'm not gonna lie, if I was closing up and the jukebox turned on, I would be very scared.
I would stop what I'm doing, lock the doors, and run home. We mentioned how a lot of ghost hunts happen here, and a lot of them seem to be using the same equipment. A lot of EVP recorders, a lot of EMF meters like we use, and envoys or ovulus, which is a spell to speak, like you can speak through phrases.
A speak and spell?
Speak and spell.
Yeah.
Phrases, numbers, words, they kind of are in this, like, almost like dictionary program, and they kind of pull from that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I also see that we have some experiences labeled as being with the Ouija board, which we've used there, and we actually did have a small experience while doing it. We didn't get that on film because it happened at a pre-existing time.
I wasn't for that one.
Oh yeah, Shay wasn't even there, so Mantis, do you want to just tell everybody about our experience with the Ouija board at Bobby Mackey's?
Sure. This is one of my personal favorite stories, especially when it comes to my personal paranormal experiences. But we were there, and we were, again, using this Ouija board outside in the parking lot, and while using it, we had suddenly heard a knocking from inside the car.
So we were using it inside the car?
Yes.
We also want to just point
Yeah, we were using it outside the car, and we heard a knocking from inside. Mind you, no one was in there, so we freaked out and quickly got away, and when we drove past it again, we actually heard the knock again.
Oh, God. But yeah, that was probably pretty cool. I don't fully believe the Ouija board is an opening or a portal. I do think truly sometimes it is just a game. I don't know if we're actually even communicating with spirits. But that was some fun validation, and or at least something that is truly paranormal in the sense of I cannot explain what that was. We cannot explain what the heck was knocking at us. But it was really cool. It wasn't on the Ouija board. Ouija board, I almost called it. But it wasn't on the Ouija board. We were playing in the trunk of my car. Yeah, we were playing in the trunk, and we heard from the inside of the car. Just like, so it was like, okay, let's pack up, let's go home. But yeah, that was our only real personal experience at Bobby Mackey's. Sad face.
I mean, we were there a few weeks ago, and we did do a short EVP session. Unfortunately, we don't have a speaker for our EVP recorder.
I bought a speaker.
Okay, now we have a speaker, so we could potentially go back.
Yeah.
But the only thing we heard was...
We heard one thing come through.
It was a male voice. I do not remember what it said.
And I also want to preface that we actually heard it come through on a spirit box, which is something I don't actually see too much success with here.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe it's just a bad area for radio frequency or something. But a spirit box is basically a device that uses radio frequencies and sweeping through channels, aka going through channels really, really fast to make a kind of static white noise. And it is believed that spirits or electronic voice phenomenons can come through. So what you don't do when you're listening to these radio frequencies is you don't really accept sounds that last for a second or less, basically. Like if you hear like...
It's when it goes over multiple sweeps.
Yeah, and the only reason you do that is because if you're only doing it once per sweep, it could definitely be the radio. So you gotta be careful sometimes when messing with the spirit box, because I think it doesn't always provide you true evidence, and you could be freaking yourself out. So make sure if you go there and you're using the spirit box, it is spanning over multiple different radio stations.
At a higher rate, right?
Well, it just the way you're setting your settings on a spirit box, it is sweeping. It's going through those stations really, really fast, but it is going through multiple. So just make sure of that, because I would say that's one of the bigger things I think younger paranormal investigators forget is this is the radio.
Right.
Literally, if I put my sweep rate on 1, we could just listen to the radio station. So yeah.
I mean, there can be some pretty valuable stuff found in spirit box sessions, but it is very, very hard to
I don't want to
communicate.
debate the whole thing here. I just wanted to bring that up because also it's not a piece of equipment that's used here often. I don't actually hear too many responses on the spirit box specifically at Bobby Mackey's.
Yeah, but it is a fun one to use.
It's fun and it's easy. It's not too expensive either. So for anybody who wants to
You can find them at Walmart.
Okay, that's awkward, but
Not sponsored.
by Walmart. Goodness. But yeah,
Walmart, please sponsor us.
No.
But yeah, oh yeah, and we didn't really talk about it, but I think we mentioned earlier we used the EMF meter, and that is just an electromagnetic force meter. It's used in common household objects too, if you just want to know how much radiation, for example, your TV is putting out. So there could be a lot of reasons why your EMF meter is spiking. If it's going up, it doesn't necessarily mean paranormal. It could mean something that is completely explainable, like Shay walking under the electrical box. That's saying that there's an electronic
Field
anomaly.
right there, yeah.
So yeah, it's just saying that. And then also we don't know always how the Earth's natural EMFs work.
Right.
So it's kind of up for debate. If you're gonna paranormal investigate with an EMF, don't make that your only tool, because that's gonna be really weird.
It's really inconsistent in a way. And also Bobby Mackey's, like we mentioned, Wilder, Kentucky is basically railroad town.
Mm-hmm.
The railroad tracks were right behind Bobby Mackey's, so we could have even been picking up on that when we got slight spikes.
Yeah, so I'm just putting that out there. But also, like, it does seem like the main reason you would use an EMF, and one of the reasons why we also put that is like, oh, it's responding to it, is if you're starting to feel other weird things around, it gets super cold, and then the EMF spiking. I think that's conclusive that you can start to draw on this as paranormal. Don't say ghost, necessarily, in my opinion. I don't think necessarily Pearl Bryan is standing right there, but, like, something weird is happening there. If it suddenly goes cold, we're having a temperature drop, you're standing in the same place and it didn't spike 2 seconds before, that's where it's useful. I just want to point that out. And then the last thing we needed to just mention is EVP, because we mentioned that.
Yes.
And EVP just stands for electronic voice phenomenon, and that's literally all it is. It's an electronic voice phenomenon. Doesn't mean ghost phenomenon. Doesn't mean spirits talking to you per se. It literally is a phenomenon. It's just electronic manifests that may or may not be voices. They might be a pareidolia, which is aka putting meaning into something we don't hear.
Yes.
Or putting meaning into something, trying to put meaning into it.
Yeah.
Like if I whispered you, and you said, oh my god, you murdered me. Like,
well, it's like that. Do you remember that trend from a few years ago, the Lauren and Yanny?
Laurel and Yanny, yeah.
Yeah, it's whatever you trick your brain into hearing.
Yeah. So,
and then that's all you'll hear.
So that's potentially also pareidolia. But yeah, EVP is a very important point of paranormal investigation on average.
Yeah, which it sounds like most paranormal equipment was used at Bobby Mackey's one way or another.
Yeah, I think why so many people also like it is because it is one of those few places that it feels like it is so haunted. You don't actually need much equipment. Like, you're gonna see something, you're gonna hear something. You don't need the little high-tech recorders to hear deeply. Like, you might not hear everything, but you're gonna hear knocking.
I watched a YouTube channel a couple months ago of this Cincinnati local ghost hunters, and one of the guys, they were kind of just sitting in the parking lot. Well, driving around more or less. He was blindfolded, had headphones on, and the driver was asking questions, and he was responding, like, intellectual responses to that as they were, like, driving around Bobby Mackey's, which to me, that is good proof, because he was like, what's your name? I forget the name they said, but it was a name.
So it's like a psychic?
In a way. It's just, they called it, like, an immersion EVP session.
Okay, I'm not used to
Like,
that.
he had the EVP recorder plugged into headphones, and he was blindfolded. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. Yes. While he was blindfolded, he was listening to the EVP as the other guy's asking these questions, and he was giving very intellectual responses.
I like it, but the only thing I don't like is that nobody else can hear what he's hearing.
I do too.
That, and he was giving answers pretty quickly, which makes me have a little bit of speculation for
Right, but it is a good method, in my opinion. It would be one I would be happy to explore.
No, thank you. we got to get proof, and even then, I think proof is debatable. So I need proof that is shareable.
What?
Oh, I'm sorry. Continue.
One other fun little tidbit about Bobby Mackey's is in 2023, a short horror film, very, very low budget, by the way, called Sweet Meats was filmed.
Oh, God.
And it's basically about this country music star named Bobby Sweet, who owned a restaurant, and everybody's wondering why his meat is so sweet.
That's
but
so weird. I don't like this.
They don't want to know the secret ingredient, and
It's people.
yes.
It's Soylent Green for all the old folks out there. But also, since you were mentioning fun facts, before we get into, like, I think logic and trying to actually talk about ghosts in general and just their ghosts, I also saw that in 2022, Bobby Mackey's actually had another shooting. Like, it was a shooting in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
3 people were involved in the shooting and 2 were injured. I think I didn't hear anybody actually, like, passed away. So it sounds like everybody's okay now, but I just also want to add that from the Primrose to the Latin Quarter to... We're getting a lot of random shootings, FYI. But yeah, that was just one thing I also wanted to point out, that a lot of shootings in this.
Maybe it's just
lot.
like the force of
And that's
the
what I
slot.
wanted to talk about with the energy and stuff like that, specifically when we start to talk about logic, is there just some kind of nasty energy that is making people nasty? Why are we getting so many shootings? Why do the mob
in
want
this
this area so
like,
bad?
What's drawing them to this?
I know it's very roadhousey, so I feel like roadhouses are kind of like a little... No, not that. But roadhouses are a little grip and grim anyway. Like, you know, it's not supposed to be like...
They're a little sketchy.
Yeah, but like at the same time, to consistently change the business.
For over 100 years.
And it still has some massive issues with roughhousing, we'll say. It's weirdly speculative on what kind of energy that's giving off. If that's giving off energy, is this all a coincidence that we all just like to shoot people around here?
Yeah. Or is it just because of the history and everybody in Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area knows of Bobby Mackey's, so they think that they can kind of get away with it in a way?
Yeah, the modern day, I would say that's less explained from, like, you know, the mob days and stuff like that, Primrose and the Latin Quarter. But nowadays, I also agree, the notoriety is probably also drawing some crazos in.
Well, and also drunk people.
Yeah, no,
They're
for
all
sure.
drunk.
For sure. But yeah, I saw that there was a shooting in 2022
I mean, to give you an idea of how much glass we found on the ground there, and it had been abandoned for 6 months, was insane.
Yeah, and we also, I actually accidentally went there the same day they were giving away some of the auction stuff, so that car that we saw was up for auction, so.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, I thought, oh, like, I guess Bobby Mackey here. And it's just his, I don't know if it's his car. I don't know whose car it was, but it was a nice car, and they were auctioning it off.
I just think the biggest coincidence in all of this is him being named Robert Randall.
Yeah.
That kind of gives me the little heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
Shiver me timbers.
Okay, but in terms of logic, I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to specifically kind of talk about. So logic, in terms of our podcast for everybody, is kind of just the part where we're going to explain if we can truly try to logic our way out of this. Like, what could logically be the quote-unquote haunting, feel my air quotes, of Bobby Mackey's? What else could explain this? What is happening that is actually logical, mostly for our skeptical viewers? Who can we convince? Like, what kind of logic do we have? Does anybody have anything?
I would kind of like to start off with a little bit of the local geography, because sometimes that unlocks like a little bit of the history that is in the area. And this is in northern Kentucky. You can see downtown Cincinnati from there, and that's a huge hotspot just in general. So kind of thinking about that, you could say that there's a lot of things that have happened there, a lot of good, a lot of bad, and that bad kind of maybe trickles into some of these areas outside, like on the rims of the city, because that happens in a lot of places where it's kind of on the outskirts.
So you're saying because it's near a major city that potentially has had a lot of crime and things like that, that the results of that have trickled to the outside of it? It's almost like it's spreading?
Yeah, so most cities do have like a really hot crime area, and I would imagine kind of like a ring around the city in this case would be a perfect example of what the hotspot here would be.
So, and I'm going to go off of, I think, a little bit of what you're saying, but I don't think this is directly what you're saying, but I want to also add it. It's true, it's near a major city. So what can explain people having crime and violent acts towards one another at this area? It's sadly near a city. More cities just have violent crime. And I don't think necessarily the city has violent crime on the exponential level, but it's a city. It's gonna.
Yeah.
So we could always say that aside from you even just saying the energy, we could say that literally just criminals,
Trying
disgusting
to get
people.
away from the city, but like stay in the city, almost as like they're trying to get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, like, and then also, I think from what I understand is that Kentucky also has, like, lower tax rates and things like that, and literally, if we're going back to the 40s and stuff like that, the Cincinnati mob is described as who invades Wilder, Kentucky, and wants Bobby Mackey's. Not Wilder, Kentucky, though it seems like it has only, like, 2,000 people,
mob.
but, yeah.
And at this time in the 40s and 50s, Cincinnati was at its peak in population, the city itself, and so that could also be a huge influence as to why crime was so rampant. And I mean, again, the more people, really, it feels like the more crime you're going to have. And as Shay said, that would be a ideal getaway if you're just trying to get out of the city and then let that kind of die out and then go back across.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. Like, it makes sense to me, honestly.
But yeah, it's actually, and also I just want to make sure, because I didn't know this for sure, it is the 1950s that toppled the Cincinnati population.
About 500,000.
Yeah, 503,998.
What is that today?
309,000.
311,97.
Wow.
But yeah, that I understand. Logically, we're literally saying, what's causing people to fight and things like that. There's a literal good logical explanation for that. And I wanted to specifically also talk about, because this is something that this place is known for, is I really wanted to talk to you guys about demonic entities and demons and things like that, because this place is known to be bad. It's known to have scratches, attacks on people, exorcisms. We talked about that earlier. So, like, I just wanted to get a logical perspective on this, and I have a very specific direction I have, so I wanted to see if you guys had anything on it first before I get into my very specific direction. But how do you think you guys can explain, like, the demonic so-called presence there?
See, I think, honestly, the more I'm hearing about the history of this, I do kind of tie this back to satanic cults. Not necessarily saying Scott Jackson was involved in that cult. However, I do believe it could have been an area for it at the time. So I believe that could have drawn some dark energy. Not necessarily anything paranormal or any poltergeist, but definitely this dark vibe that can drive people a little mad. I do believe something satanic happened there,
Okay.
personally.
But yeah, so I specifically, and you guys, I want you to chime in as needed, but so a big reason I don't like certain paranormal investigators or ghost hunters and stuff like that in general is I do think there's a lot of religious affiliation with it that I think we're highly implementing. Of course, your religion can stop it. I mean, we always connected very oftenly to the Catholic religion because that is the majority of people who are religious in the United States. They are associated with Catholicism. And I think it's a little convenient that the one thing these demons are usually connected to and the one thing that can get rid of them is so conveniently the most popular religion. Does it mean that's right? That's for you to decide in the sense of like, oh, that means it's the right religion. I'm not going to speak on that. That's something you guys can personally believe in your own time. But yeah, I don't actually know. So I went into kind of my own rabbit hole of philosophy and mentality on demons and stuff like that. And first off, I also want to make a very important distinction that I was not even aware of beforehand, is that demons, calling something a demon is much more broad, and demons are not directly controlled, supposedly. They're just havoc wreakers. They're just unsponsored enemies, basically. While devils are specific to religion, and they are considered minions of Satan. So, when you're saying demon, you're not necessarily connecting it as much to religion.
Just more or less saying, this is evil, this is not good, this is evil.
Yeah, well, if you say devil, you are kind of connecting it. We're getting more into the religious aspect of it.
Devil was just a synonym for Satan.
And it is. I mean, people are definitely like, that's the devil and then the devil's devils. But it's like, no, that's definitely a thing. But just to be clear, I'm going to try from now on to always refer to them as demons if we're talking about it at all, because it's a little less specific. So, I was doing some reading, and I also kind of just wanted to see, like, how do religious people feel about actual demons and stuff like that? So I actually read an article by John Holbert. He's a professor of preaching, basically, at a religious school. And in his article, I will use this direct quote, but I want to give all credit to him. He basically says that Satan and his minions are metaphors and ways of poetically reminding us of the realities of some of our nasty desires. So he's saying that the energy basically of demons, devils, Satan's minions, things like that, it's not real. Like, he's basically saying that's not real. It's literally just a reminder to be morally good in a religious sense. And also, I think it's also just kind of natural in humans to have this weird, like, consciousness of, like, a good and a bad, and so we name the bad. Demons actually stem back to the Paleolithic age, which is human prehistory about 3.3 million years ago. This is before humans have much of anything. Their biggest technology was stone tools. They still believed in demons. So it's showing that from an early age, there is always kind of a connection with bad entities causing bad. And I think that just simplifies it, and I understand why. It's a very big concept to literally talk about, honestly, morally good and morally bad, and things like that. But yeah, it's a lot to even say. But I like going off of the idea that, like, I don't know, demons is just a way we identify negative energy, and I don't want anybody to actually sit there and think, to me, in my opinion, that it's a devil. It's not 666, it's not mocking of a trinity with the threes. I think this is kind of not BS, but I think it's a little too wishful thinking. Of course you know exactly how to deal with the evilness. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that out there because this place is so potentially demonic and things like that. And also the last part I wanted to just kind of mention is that this is something that Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher, mentioned a lot. And he also claimed he had a demon in him, but also apparently in Greek, demons were much more defined by interpersonal self. So basically, he kind of just overall said that if consciousness is true, if we actually have a morally good and a morally bad, the morality is something we learn and that's not inherited, but it's also something he claims that knowledge is something that we learn from the point of rebirth. So, sorry. To clarify, knowledge is innate and not something we gather. So we think we learn throughout life, but he's claiming that you're born, and before you were born, you knew everything. But then you're born, and now you have to relearn everything you used to know before you were born.
So almost like reincarnation.
Yeah, kind of, but that's kind of what he's believing, but it's more thought, like, knowledge-based.
More like soulful in a way.
It's less of, like, actually having a person's.
Right.
But yeah, and he's just basically saying that if we can connect that to consciousness, then there is some actual intent. That morality is something we knew beforehand. We knew what was morally good and morally bad. Like, it's not a coincidence that humans just decided that murder is bad. Like, there was something in us from before we were born telling us that that was bad.
Some people.
Well, yes, obviously there's always going to be some damaged individuals. But it's just like, morally good, morally bad. What do we name the morally bad? Demons. So it's literally all thought. It's not, to me, an actual physical thing. That's what I'm getting at, long story short, is that we have John Holbert, Plato, things like that. To me, they're all over saying that basically demons are not real entities. Don't take them that way. It's just a reminder that morality is a thing, and that there are bad humans, and there are good humans, and we can normally identify which is which without contest. In the sense of, like, we just know. We know, oh, that's a good person, that's a bad person. But I didn't know if you guys had specific thoughts on how you can explain away demons and stuff like that after me going on that long-winded answer.
Well, if we're going based off of what Andy said, then I would view demons as almost like a projection.
Mm-hmm.
We're bringing all of our biggest insecurities, all of our biggest faults out into this world and producing demons. But I do think there is also some kind of physical element to demons in a way.
I'm not saying that there's not, but I also think the consciousness can do weird things. And it's
Oh,
not
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's not something that the human mind can study.
We can't study. We have barely touched the surface of studying our brains.
Well, yeah, because it's also hard. Consciousness is so something not rooted in physical. It's so mental. It's like hard to study. Even the brain is not going to tell you exactly what you're mentally thinking right now.
Like, I think as most that we know is what part of the brain does what to our body.
Yeah.
I think that is almost the full extent that we know to our brain.
Yeah.
On a pure logical standpoint.
No, I agree. So can we sense, to me, like, is it truly demons that are haunting Bobby Mackey's? Or are we just able to experience some intense dread? Is there some history we don't even know? Like, as in, like, predating the 1800s?
I'm sure, because record keeping back then, especially since Wilder was just becoming a city once Pearl Bryan was killed,
Yeah.
it easily could have been something else.
No, I agree. And I'm not even thinking, like, when the Native Americans used to live here, we'd never know what happened, because...
Well, and the Native Americans did all these spiritual rituals, like...
Well, and that's going back to, I think, specifically religion.
Right,
But I'm just saying, like, what if there was a slaughter here that's not recorded? There could have been a lot because this land was not Wilder, Kentucky in 1782. So it's just, like, I don't know, I just really think it's hard to conclusively say demonic. And I think, once again, we've discussed this before, and you'll definitely hear this in future episodes. I think if you guys go in there and you're expecting demons, you're expecting something unholy, it's literally your brain. I mean, I think that's also why exorcisms work, is potentially because your brain, which was the one that convinced you that your bad consciousness should take over, can be healed once your good consciousness also comes back to you, but you have to allow it. It's kind of like hypnotizing people. I learned in my psychology class in college that it's not impossible to be hypnotized if you don't believe in it, but people who believe in hypnotism are more likely to have it successfully work than people who don't.
Yeah.
So you have to believe in things, I think, in order for them to work. And it's not to say that those feelings are fake. I'm not trying to say you're making it up.
Well then, okay. Just to kind of like build off of this with like a bigger kind of debate, could that also go inside for those who are argumenting religion? Could that also like be opposed to it, like that the brain, the conscious strain, creates these entities itself? So you're arguing here that it could just be just all in our heads.
It's not that it's all in our heads. It's literally the idea that also, like, this is all based on morality. This is not based on religiosity. But if you would like religiosity to heal this for you, if there's a bad energy there and you connect it with religious purposes, you connect it with Trinity mocking, 666, other very demonic symbols, if you can see that, I think you're also the same person who could be healed by religion.
Well, then, I think if we're going off that, like, I feel that is a self-heal, meaning...
Absolutely.
That's only going to heal you as a person. That is not going to heal anybody else that is to move into that haunted house that you claimed was haunted, had exorcised. That doesn't necessarily, if ghosts are real and if any paranormal is real, which there is paranormal in the world,
Yeah.
it's always going to be there. I don't think you can ever get rid of that.
No, and I'm not, sorry, yeah, no, and I agree with that for sure. I'm not arguing that. It's just some people are very susceptible to thinking,
Right.
oh my God, this place is haunted by Satan himself.
And
then they almost worry themselves to death. They get themselves in a bind, and the only way they can get themselves out of it is by going through their own religious means. And I'm not arguing that that's inherently wrong. I'm just arguing that I think a lot of implications of demons and devils and stuff like that is based on the person themselves. Like, if you're seeing, not that it's not bad energy, something growls at you, for example, I understand, that's bad energy. Could it be the spirit of a dead cat? Maybe. Like, we don't know. But I'm not saying that it's going to make you feel good, but I'm also saying it would make you feel bad, but a religious person might see that as something trying to intimidate their religiosity and stuff like that. It's trying to intimidate them. Yes. Versus another person potentially just getting scared. And then this is also something that even paranormal investigators talk about, is don't show that you're scared, because then it'll infect you.
It will attach.
Well, they're literally kind of, to me, admitting that if you are susceptible, if you believe in this, you're more likely. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I'm not trying to say that people who do that are wrong, but if you are already mentally not stable, you're already mentally scared, you're already trembling and stuff like that, and you're already religious, how are you not going to draw those conclusions?
Yeah, you're welcoming them into your mind.
It's kind of like being prone to walking in a haunted house and being like, oh, I'm going to get scared.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you do that, you're opening yourself up. It's kind of, to me, when we're talking about evil influences and specifically demonic hauntings, I think we're really talking about ourselves and how much we're letting ourselves convince ourselves. It's literally a convincing our own mind game to me. Not that there's not bad things that aren't happening. I've seen scratches that come out of Bobby Mackey's and stuff like that. Can I explain that? Yes and no. I mean, I think you could have scratched yourself and forgot. You could have brushed up against stuff and forgot.
I think the issue is the burning sensation they feel when it happens.
Yeah, well, and I mean,
That's where it becomes...
I have cats, so I also know it burns sometimes when you get scratched. But it's like, I understand, and I'm not going to debate that these physical things aren't happening. It's all the emotional things. It's you're letting yourself open up. You're letting yourself be exercised. You're letting yourself stay there. You're letting yourself get connected there in an unhealthy way. It's just, there's so much, and I think this is down to morality. I think this is just like...
I think everyone needs to be a skeptic, and I've said this before. I think everyone needs to be skeptical to some extent. Mm-hmm. I do not think you can fully believe, because like you were saying, Andy, you're then drawing that to yourself. If you're a believer in any sense, like strongly a believer, you are drawing that attention, good or bad, to you.
Yeah, exactly. Like you might unintentionally, and I know you don't mean it, be putting yourself into your own harm's way by your own mentality. Not even saying, oh, the spirits get attached to you because now you've let your guard down. I'm not even saying it is that. It could be that. I'm not even saying it's that. At the least, you have a consciousness and you are letting the bad win because you're scared of the bad. Your bad conscious, the little devil and angel on your shoulder. If you're consistently so scared of this devil on your shoulder that we're ignoring the angel, you're going to live in fear.
Your whole life.
Like, yeah, literally. So it's like, it's kind of like that to me. You feel bad, you feel negative, so you get scared, and you're just feeding off of yourself, and it's not going well, and specifically, you can deteriorate.
Trust me, from personal experience, I was full-on believer for years, scared myself into hearing things, seeing things, and I know I did, and there's some that I can't debunk as me hearing or seeing things because other people have been around to witness it too. Mm-hmm. But there are some things I know it was just me getting in my own head. Like the 2016 clown craze when all of those people were... Yeah. I was terrified that when I would take the trash out at my childhood home, that they would come running out because our neighbors had like this foresty area behind them. I thought they were going to come running out and I would run up the driveway bringing out the trash.
Paranoia is really effective. That's all I gotta add.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it's kind of paranoia. It's paranoia, but then also like it's your mind playing tricks on you. To me,
absolutely,
it's at the utmost extent. That's why I think it is important, and this is also literally me trying to protect any paranormal wannabe investigators out there. If you go into these places, try to go in there not believing. And I only say that because I think if you go in there already kind of scared, you are opening yourself up.
It's either that or you're not going to see anything at all.
Yeah.
And it's going to honestly hurt you more.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you need to walk in there like, I ain't afraid of no ghosts. But at the same time, you do need to say, like, I don't think, basically almost give yourself a pep talk. I don't think these things are demons. I don't believe they can hurt me. I don't believe they can follow me home. And, like, I think because if you can convince yourself mentally that that is how that's going to go, then that's going to help you in the future. I'm not going to say it's 100% because I already know that somebody will be like, well, I did myself my own pep talk and said I wouldn't be possessed and then I was exorcised and now I'm a demon.
Well, you can absolutely, like, reverse psychology yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying my theory on demons, demonic possession, things like that are very variable depending on who you are. Because I think if you're religious, I think if you're susceptible to, like, hypnotism, you believe in hypnotism, you're more likely to be hypnotized. If you believe in demons, I think you're more likely to be affected.
Yeah, I think, like you said, everyone needs to go in a little bit skeptic, or at least calm their nerves, because one, you might not catch anything at all when you're ghost hunting, because you're such a believer that they're not going to want to talk to you. Mm-hmm. Or two, as a lot of people say, they feed on fear.
Yeah.
And that could be a subconscious thing, or that could be a legit physical thing in the world.
No, exactly.
And there is no way to prove that.
Fear is such an interesting human emotion in general, fight or flight. It's very natural to experience fear because that's just our prey response when we are prey. So it's like, I completely understand. Fear is something you can't fully get rid of. But at the same time, you first off, flight. You can always flight or fight. You don't have to sit there in fear. You need to figure out how to deal with it. And I know paranormal is so weird because it's abnormal. It's outside of our boundaries of understanding. It's not normal.
Yeah.
So it's hard to really sit there and know as an animal with an animal response how to respond to that.
I think the biggest metaphor I can give is look for all exit signs.
Yeah.
When you notice something strange happening, look for a way to either leave the conversation or the building or whatever, metaphorical or literal. I think that is the biggest takeaway is like look for your exit.
And so, that's a great discussion. And Mantis, I just wanted to quickly confirm, did you have anything else to add to this specific logic?
It is believed, this kind of goes along with what you're saying, that it's believed that you can't, like, if you don't give your permission to be possessed or followed or anything, that you won't be, because they can't by your permission.
Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah, okay, so that was definitely one thing. I do have a random other theory, and you guys can tell me if you believe it or not. But this also stems from our personal visits. The building's pretty run down, and it's been like that for a little bit. I don't know how long, but for a while. Do you guys think, because it's kind of run down, because it's right next to a water source, it's kind of right next to some vegetation, some trees, things like that, that any paranormal things, specifically in the basement where they claim a lot of things happen, could be animals?
I think a good chunk of it could be animals, but also how much can we debunk being animals? There's so much going on that, yeah, of course there could be a possum or a raccoon that got into the basement and made a mess. Yeah, absolutely. But I do not think we can debunk everything that has happened there as just being animals.
No, and I'm sorry, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say, oh, when you see the headless woman, that's a possum in disguise. But it's like,
Scooby-Doo.
I think the footsteps, specifically the ones that people have heard downstairs, like in the basement, could easily be a raccoon or something.
Yeah, that's also why I mentioned the basement, specifically because we saw there was such a big opening in the door, and because it looks like the foundation is a little crappy. It could totally be something that's just in the walls. I mean, rats do that, so scratching noises, I think that's a prime example of a potential animal. And I understand, it's hard to sit there as a paranormal investigator and say, well, can we scan all your walls for rats first? Like, that's hard. And then also with an opener building like this, where the door has a crack in it, doesn't even mean that when you're paranormal investigating, one won't run in at 3 a.m. So it's just like...
But I think most haunted places, especially more the business side of things versus houses, a lot more can be debunked by wildlife, whether that's bugs or if it's full-on like rodents or animals. I really think a lot of the business side of things can be debunked, mainly because they have more entrances and exits than a normal house. Mm-hmm. And like you said, a lot of them could be older buildings and the foundation's starting to wither away in a sense, so.
I have one more logic for sure, but one other thing that I wanted to ask is specifically about the well, because a lot of people consider the well a portal to hell. We don't know for sure. We cannot confirm if the slaughterhouse built this well, because we can't even necessarily confirm that the slaughterhouse was there. We speculate, and it's heavily implied it probably was, but we don't know.
There was no city records back then.
Well, what else do you think that well would be? Do you actually think it's a portal? Do you believe in portals? And I assume probably not in the conventional sense. It's not just like Doctor Strange, like woo, woo, woo. But what do you guys think about the portal to hell?
So I believe in portals to hell. Yes, absolutely. But I feel the well is too convenient. It's a hole in the ground. Like, that is way too convenient for me to believe that is a portal. Because a lot of people claim that hell, like a lot of theorists claim that hell is almost in the center of Earth. Mm-hmm. And that it's actually a physical place. So yes, if we're going in that direction, yeah, that could be a portal to hell. But I'm looking at it as like a metaphorical sense. We don't know if hell's real. Mm-hmm. I think it could be a portal to believing that it's real, to conjuring up these things, and I do think it could be real. Now, as for the slaughterhouse, I think there's a lot of evidence there to prove that it was a slaughterhouse, but who knows what was there before then. Mm-hmm. That could have even built the well. It could have even been like old fields and they needed the well and did that as a water source because close to the Ohio River, get something to pull that.
My personal thing is that I think it was built on, like, from a slaughterhouse because at the, I believe it has, like, a little underground tunnel that goes into the river, the Ohio River.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Oh, it's the
because...
Licking River.
Licking.
Licking
Yeah.
River.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, no, you're there.
Because of that, you know, I do believe that it could very well be built by the slaughterhouse because you want to get rid of that blood. You want to get rid of excess, and how else are you gonna get rid of it besides draining it?
I mean, you can definitely get rid of it in other ways, but I agree. It's very before climate change activism and stuff like that. It's very just dump it in the water, Jim. Like, I get it. I understand. I'm not trying to argue the actual validity that the well was built. Like,
No, I get what you mean.
but, like, I think the portal is the biggest thing. So, my obviously biggest issue is it being called hell. I don't think necessarily it's hell.
I think it's
a catchy name.
I think it's what people can connect to the most. We see hell as this bad place, so anything that can bring anything evil is now hell. So there could be multiple types of hell. We don't even know. Like, there could be demons of all sorts of kinds, like, coming from different areas. Like, who knows if it's a portal to other dimensions that
That's what I think
is
too.
more hell-like, more dystopian almost in a way.
I agree, and I think that's the only thing that I think we could debate about portals in general, is what are truly what we think of as ghost portals, portal to hell, thing like that. Are they actually just ghosts, legitimately, like, they can, like, almost fast travel? Like, they can literally come from, like, what if this is H.H. Holmes? Like, for example, it's just somebody who comes and goes, and, like, this is how they can travel. We don't know necessarily if that's how dead people in the traditional sense would travel. I think because dimensional research is so limited, like, it's hard to prove that dimensions exist.
Just proven that there's up to how many dimensions?
Yeah, no, I don't even know. It's just because I didn't do research, but that is a good thing. It's just, like, save that for a later episode.
Right.
But, no, yeah, portals are just weird because, don't get me wrong, it definitely to me falls in the paranormal thing. It falls into, we can't explain it, but there's a lot of energy, or your EMF. You bring over the EMF, a lot of EMF spiking there. Why is that happening? Why? What is that?
Well, and I think the reason why at Bobby Mackey's we can also say there's a lot of EMF over there is because there's a lot of water between the Licking River and the Ohio River, because it's pretty close to both.
Yeah.
It is prime to create a portal. I've also been told, like, mirrors and any glass can create portals if you do it the right way.
Bloody Mary?
Yeah, basically. But that one I find far-fetched versus water and, like, woods and stuff.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just think portals in and of themselves, I think it's funny to just say portal to hell. Like, once again, it goes back with the whole demonic debate, and I won't try to bring it up because I know it's a lot to talk about. But I don't necessarily think it's a portal to hell. Do I think it's a lot of energy for an unexplainable reason? Yes. Is it paranormal? It might not even be. It might be some weird down below the Earth's crust in the mantle or something. Probably not the mantle.
The core.
Yeah, like, but, oh yeah, the core. Let's go all the way down. But, like, it's potentially like something is wrong down there. Like,
Yeah. Well,
an underground volcano, or I don't know.
Well, there's a famous recording out there on YouTube that you can find.
It sounds like screaming.
Yes, where they stick the microphone down as far as we can reach, and it just sounds like screaming. And that is why a lot of people...
Russian super hole.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people have claimed that hell is in the center of the earth. That is why that theory came about.
We like to connect hell with being very hot. Not
Or
hot
hell
chocolate.
could be the sun, you know.
That's true. But yeah, no, for sure. And then, so lastly, I just want to ask about a couple logics of ghosts in specific. Pearl Bryan. Let's just get that out of the way. She died 2.5 miles away. I don't think it's impossible. And if her head was supposedly actually used for a ritual at this well, I understand that connects her there to it. But that's speculative. We have no proof of that.
But I also feel Pearl herself could haunt where that field was, that she was killed. That's where I think she would actually haunt, is where she was actually killed. So it just says her body was found 2.5 miles away. We don't know where she was killed.
No, yeah, and that's a fair point. And aside from just even dead, do you guys think it is purely coincidence that people are seeing a headless ghost and just...
No, I don't think it's a coincidence.
I will say, I think it's a little, what's it called?
Two on the
You want it to be.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's mobsters, guys. Like, mobsters own this place. People could have mysteriously have gone missing for a while.
Or there could be other decapitated people
That's what I'm
there.
saying.
Or it
Like,
could be King Louis the 14th.
maybe in his portal. Like,
Or if
they're
it's a
jumping
slaughterhouse, it could be a pig. Like,
who knows? Maybe the ghost world, if we all die and there is portals, it's just like actually just an excuse to tour the world. Like, but like no, exactly. Like, why do we connect this murder, this awful, awful murder, to Bobby Mackey's when really there's no reason we actually can connect it? It's purely speculative.
I think a lot of it is because of that speculation between Walling and Jackson being part of a satanic cult. And again, that is pure speculation. But there was more evidence that I didn't really write down of Scott Jackson's past, of it leading more towards a satanic cult. There was a lot about him. Well, not a lot that I could find,
I
but
read that he was 5'6".
but a lot that I could find that kind of connected him to being a little bit more mischievous, and a lot of people, especially back then in the 1800s.
Oh gosh, I didn't even think of that. Like, what if you were just a little abnormal? People would be like, you worship Satan.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
like
true.
they never, like, we had the satanic panic back in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
But back then, anything you did bad was Satan.
That's true.
You're
That's fair.
worshiping Satan if you like robbed a train or whatever.
That's fair. And by the way, just while we're on it, do you guys actually think they convicted the right people? Because they never technically confessed.
Yes, I think so.
Oh, Mantis has a disagreement.
No, forensics were not very good at this point, and I just don't think. I think it's just perfectly put in this path of being exactly what we want it to be, and it's too like movie-esque.
But you're more statistically to be killed, like likely to be killed by a romantic partner than you are a random person.
But you could also claim he was her, it's been described in every text I saw, he was her secret romantic partner. So maybe that changes the game a little bit.
Maybe because she was pregnant and they were supposed to be keeping their relationship a secret, and he didn't want to find people to find out that he had. But she had money, so it could have been the other way around.
Had some good money. Let's just say that.
The farm she was found supposedly the following morning after her death. She was found on a farm by the farmer and his son, I think. So you never even know if potentially they could have something to do with it. You just don't know.
I mean, I think it would be kind of dumb if the farmer and his son did it to leave it on their property.
I will say, as a person who also engages in a lot of true crime, a lot of people think they can get away with it if they're the ones who reported it.
That's true. That's very true.
Have you ever heard of the Weeping Killer? He's
Yes.
always like, "Ooh," he freaks me out.
Yes, and then he freaking oh my god!
Sorry,
that case pisses me off, but also like,
I know, right? Also, his voice is kind of creepy, but it
he's
also
like,
is so
I
nervy.
just killed someone, and I'm like,
Sorry, besides the point.
getting my dogs all hyped over here.
But yeah, no, for sure. I understand. I think I understand both of your points. I completely think they did probably convict the right people, but it would always be interesting because technically...
Or what about this? Walling did it. Jackson didn't know, but was also helping him cover for it.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean...
Because who knows, Walling could have either had a thing with Pearl or had a thing for Scott.
Oh, interesting.
Plot twist.
I agree, right? No, it
That's
is...
a Shyamalan.
Because
twist, right?
it's the 1800s. You can't be openly gay.
No,
So
that's
that
true.
is a good theory that, like, oh, they could have been secret lovers and they're covering for each other. Like, one of them did it and they're covering for the other.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. Also because I not that it adds to the validity, but why are we only reportedly hearing and seeing Walling? We're not hearing Jackson at all. Does that add to that?
To me, I think it's because Walling did that, like, killed Pearl. Or, no, wrong name. Jackson killed Pearl, and Walling is pissed at Jackson for throwing him under the bus.
So it's almost like, what's it called? Like internal, like just, I don't know, just mourning almost? Like,
Yeah.
Just like guilt, like he was found guilty for something he didn't do. He was killed for something he didn't do.
Like, he probably originally confessed to stand by Scott, but then didn't know that they would get the death penalty.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
Like, that could be a reason why. He thought they would just, maybe one of them would die, but he didn't think both of them would die.
And it is true. I mean, we also have plenty of reason to believe why Scott would kill Pearl, but we don't have many reasons to believe why Alonzo would also join in. We really don't know why.
Besides my theory of it.
Besides theories, we don't have any evidence why he did that.
I almost feel there was some romantic entanglement there.
A love triangle.
Or they're in a poly relationship.
Oh my gosh, okay. I think you're getting reaching a little bit for 1896. But, I mean, I get it, maybe.
It could be possible. I mean, guys had multiple wives. And
anything's possible, I get it. But yeah, okay, so I just think overall, I'll say with the Pearl Bryan thing, I don't really actually believe her ghost is at Bobby Mackey's. And I know that's controversial in saying, I think there are ghosts there. I don't necessarily believe Pearl is there, because I think that it's kind of just reaching. It was a gruesome murder. It's kind of like the Black Dahlia. Of course she's going to haunt, just because first off, everybody remembers it from the time. And second off, we really, truly think gruesome things are just going to be haunting, stuff like that. And I understand the logic behind that, or at least the supposed logic. If it's a dead person haunting, of course, she might not even realize she's dead in theory. But why is she at Bobby Mackey's? I truly cannot explain that to me.
The only way I could believe it's her is, like I said, if she was killed there for the ritual or just out of pure coincidence she happened to be killed there and then they moved her body. Because, they never said where her body was found, was that they can confirm that that's where she was murdered.
Yeah. And then, all right, last thing I for sure have for logic, and then I want to make sure you guys don't have anything else. Johanna, the speculated specter. We have no confirmation she was ever even alive. So,
yeah, because we don't have a last name. We don't really have any history of her.
We don't even have her dad's name, and her dad was supposedly the owner.
Yeah.
So, how do you guys feel about Johanna? And specifically her rose perfume, her killing herself. It's very almost Romeo
picturesque.
and Juliet. Well, not picturesque. It's kind of disgusting.
Picturesque in, a horror sense.
And you know what also? It gives me kind of the same... These kind of tall tales, man. It sounds a little familiar to one of our future episodes of Lick Road.
Yeah.
We get into that a little bit, so I'm just thinking, is this just one of those well-crafted stories to explain ghosts? What do you guys think?
I think we've heard it time and time again in history of specifically fathers not liking their daughters' relationships. And they either go after the guy's family or after their daughter. Mm-hmm. It has happened many times all throughout history. So I think it is plausible, but I think the weird part is not having even just a family name to call her dad. It's very weird that...
But he owned it. Don't you think you'd have records specifically of it being right before
I don't
Bobby
know if
Mackey's?
it's because he was in charge of such a large mob that they were protecting
he had an
themselves
alias.
almost.
Maybe he had an alias.
Yeah, or the reporters and police were protecting themselves so they weren't going to get in trouble with the mob.
And you also, those were the days. That's true too.
Because police didn't have a lot of resources back then.
No, that's true, and a lot of police were mobsters. I don't know about this exact area, but I know that was the thing in Chicago.
Yeah, so it could be that they were trying to protect themselves or other witnesses or whatnot, and just basically keeping him anonymous. Because in the end, Johanna allegedly killed her dad because he killed her lover. Mm-hmm. And then she killed herself. So maybe they did it out of respect for the mob so that they wouldn't be attacked by the mob.
Maybe, and I don't know.
And, I mean, kind of both things that I've kind of thought about were both said that, that it's happened before and that aliases can be used. You never know. What year did this take place?
Isn't it speculated in the 1940s-esque?
Right.
Well, actually...
1950s.
1950s.
So, you never know. I don't know. We could probably do some research on it, but if it was a popular name then, and that could just be just what it's called because of the name attribution.
Or watch, his last name was Doe. And maybe not spelled the same way, but they didn't want to confuse the public by referring to him as so-and-so Doe. Who knows? That could even be. Or potentially their family were immigrants of some sort and didn't want to release their actual names. Again, another alias.
I agree. I was trying to look up just the name Johanna.
Well, that's just
Hebrew. So in theory, probably about... I don't know. Wherever Hebrew stems from, because it stems from a lot of areas. I know I was going to say, like, Israel or something like that,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
but
say.
we're not going to say that because I know Hebrew is a little bit...
It's an older
all over the
language, too, so it's hard to track down.
The most it ever seemingly was popular was 1903, FYI, according to just a source I looked up immediately on the website. So, 1903 to 1940, that probably put her a little past, like, she'd be a little too young to fit in that area.
Yeah, because she was quite young when she fell pregnant with Robert Randall's child.
And then also, why do we have Robert Randall's full name, but we also can't confirm if he was real? What the heck is that?
I don't know. Like, something weird was going on in the Latin Quarter, like, all around. Like, the reason it was shut down was because of so many shootings. Now, like, nobody knows who actually ran this. Like,
No, it's true. It sounds very sketch, and they didn't keep records, even though this was a time where the records were fine.
We're well into the 50s where we have the technology to keep more sufficient records, especially when it comes to who owns what business. Because back then, most businessmen and women, well, mainly men, knew of the other ones around town.
Yeah. What's the name of that guy? E.A. Buck?
Yeah, Buck Brady.
So, I know we talked a little bit about Johanna and stuff. I think I can buy it. I think a female is probably haunting. Do I necessarily think it's related to the Latin Quarters, Johanna? No. But I'll say,
dancer.
it could be almost anybody who's a female. Like, we don't know what went on. It was a speakeasy. They could have been doing brothel level stuff at some points. We don't know. It was run by the mob. There could be women who were sex workers here who were just thrown away like trash. That's pretty common, sadly. But I agree. I think a Johanna type spirit is definitely plausible. I just don't know if the exact story is what we're seeing. I don't know if you guys had any other things on that.
Well, maybe the reason we can't find so much on Johanna or Randall or her dad is because no one may have reported their deaths until years later.
Yeah, it was kept inside job.
Yeah, it easily could have been because it's mob on mob crime in a way, because it's the daughter killing the father. And the father obviously couldn't speak his piece of killing Robert Randall.
So I wanted to point out really fast, I found out that the mob in question, and I did not do research on this, so my apologies. Please look up more information if you'd like later and tell us about it. But the mob's name is the Syndicate. Just an FYI.
S.I. or?
S-Y-N.
I would also like to say that sometimes stories can get twisted, manipulated, and, especially if you are only hearing it from a maybe unreliable source. And maybe they are telling what they know as what they know. And maybe that's not the truth. So it could be some situation like that where it kind of just goes through that grapevine.
Yeah, no, for sure. Sorry, I wanted to piggyback and go back to this. So sorry, our listeners, we're very everywhere today. But I was just thinking, and I could not for sure confirm it within a short period of looking it up. Maybe we'll add a comment to this later. I don't know. E.A. Buck Brady, the man who owned it when it was in the 30s, the Primrose, who fought the mob for it, and then basically, kind of let them win at some point. He killed himself. A big method of how people kill themselves is, sadly, gunshot through the head. What if he's the headless ghost?
That's actually really interesting. But would he be headless because he doesn't want to show the gunshot wound? But is it like a choice thing almost?
I was just thinking, well, I mean, if he had a shotgun, his head's probably gone, FYI.
That's true.
And also, I don't know if you confirmed, did you confirm that it was by, a gun, or?
No, I can't. I'm
It's
still
just
trying to, I'm just
common.
speculating. I just said it was common, yeah.
Okay, I mean, hanging is also, really common,
Yeah.
too, and what does that do? That goes right around the head, and that could be attributed to it as well.
I mean, do we know for a fact? Because it says the headless ghost matches the description of Pearl Bryan. So almost like a feminine stature.
So what I have with an issue of modern people saying it matches her description, to me, is reaching, and the only reason I say that is because how are they going to know? They saw her custom-made shoes. They're like, excuse me, madam.
Well, it's also a time where women wore dresses all the time.
No.
So,
And I understand that, but I think it's kind of hard to say finite. That was Pearl. Yeah, that was obviously.
well, wasn't she found in the field also naked? I feel like I read that somewhere.
Maybe.
I think so.
I think she was nude when they discovered her body.
Sure, I just thought of that as a potential, and it doesn't mean, once again, even if it is Pearl Bryan for some reason, it doesn't mean her ghost is roaming around naked. I would assume not, because she had her shoes on. almost. Because why would they leave her naked and then have her shoes on?
Sometimes people use that as like an MO. They use that as like their calling card. Like, it could have even been a serial killer.
I was about to say, but that feels more serial killer-esque. So to me, if you're just Scott Jackson, why are you leaving anything behind? You're just trying to get rid of a problem.
He could have been a serial killer.
That's it. We stopped the serial killer of Wilder, Kentucky. Somebody look into this. Let's get some true crime going. Let's find the Golden State Killer equivalent.
I love true crime, so don't get me started.
But yeah, so that is definitely something I think that is something that's debatable to me. Now, I understand there's been a lot of unrecorded deaths in this place anyway, because the mob owned it and things like that. So there could be a lot of unnamed fellows and girls who were haunting this place, who were shot and killed there, and we just don't know their names. So Johanna could literally be anyone. Robert Randall, people say they see Buck, I believe, sometimes. Walling. These guys could all be just people that the mob randomly shot. We don't really have any evidence for sure. It's not like, why, hello, kids. Let me grab a drink with my friends. I'm Alonzo M. Walling, and then just disappears. Like, what?
So, one thing I found looking up Pearl Bryan, trying to see how she was found, the coroner identified that she was decapitated while alive.
Yeah, I saw that.
So, it wasn't like, if this was a failed abortion, she was alive when you decapitated her. Why the hell were you trying to cover up your track? Like,
no, it's disgusting. It sounds like to me they weren't even trying to cover it up.
No. And she was 5 months pregnant, so she was well into her pregnancy, so no abortion clinic would have even taken her.
Well, abortions weren't a thing back then, but yeah.
Well, you know what I mean. Nowadays.
But yeah, okay, so overall, guys, let's ask the end of our episode question. So at the end of every episode, we will be asking a question to you guys, but also to our other co-hosts. So, do you guys think that Bobby Mackey's is haunted? I'll start with Shay.
Yes, I think it is relatively haunted. I think there's just a lot of evidence between, like, the physical touch, the smell of roses, which I get it. Or, like, aromas can last. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's always roses or rose perfume. One thing I believe is the physical touches are very likely to be ghost or something abnormal. What I don't believe, though, is, like, all the figures they're seeing. To me, because they're always full body apparitions. The chances of that happening every time one appears is so rare. Like, it's occasionally you'll see the full body, but most of the time it's part or, like, just an orb.
Okay. Mantis?
I say yes, and I do agree with Shay here that I do not believe very much. I've always been like very skeptical about even seeing slight details on a supposed figure. I haven't, obviously can't speak for myself, but that just always seems like your stereotypical ghost and specter, whatever. But I do believe in kind of like that interaction, like the knocking, but especially based on personal experience, but also the fact that a lot of people themselves have reported that same thing.
And for me, yes, I do actually kind of believe that overall this is haunted. And I know out of the three of us, I'm probably going to say the no most often to this question because I overthink. But I think there is something there. Do I think it's exactly what everybody's expecting? Not exactly. I really actually do have a hard time, sadly, believing that Pearl Bryan is haunting. I hope if there is a spirit realm and that whatever she is or isn't at rest, I do hope her soul is not still haunting at this point. But that is something that I really just don't believe in here. I don't believe that Pearl Bryan is there. And then Johanna, I actually do believe there is something there that's being called Johanna. I don't think it's necessarily the story we're being told. And yeah, so I actually believe, yes, there's a lot of things going on here, but I don't believe it's everything we exactly believe it to be.
Weirdly enough, I just had a random theory. What if Pearl is haunting Bobby Mackey's? She's looking for her head.
Interesting.
Like, she's haunting Bobby Mackey's because she knows that's where her head is, because they could have thrown it down the well.
I've heard theories, I don't know if I may have mentioned this earlier, that there are a lot of theories saying that the head could be at the bottom of the well.
I've also heard theories of Walling and Jackson burning it in like the dental school. Jackson was a dental school student, so I've also heard them burning it in like the furnace they had there.
Well, yeah, you guys should let us know. We're going to definitely make a post about this when we release our first episode. Today is also National Ghost Hunting Day. Surprise, that was half of the goal of getting this up, so happy National Ghost Hunting Day. And yeah, we'll get a post up. We want to see you guys comment, see what you think about our first episode, what would you guys change, things like that, but also give us your opinions. Is Bobby Mackey's haunted? Is Pearl Bryan there? Is Johanna real? Who else is haunting there? Like Buck Brady, is he there? All the good stuff. Just let us know. But yeah, since this is Shay's episode, I'm going to let her officially close out, but I wanted to make sure to plug us as well. And thank you, Mantis, for being our social media manager. He does a great job of making sure that is routinely up to date.
So thank you for tuning in to S'more Stories. Join us next week while we cover some more spooky, scary stories.
And a very special thank you to our editors, Andy and Sam, as well as our host, Andy, Shay, and Mantis. We couldn't do it without any of you, and thank you for listening.